honor to introduce you to my friend Karen Vargus. Karen is the founder and director of Living Life Leadership and an advocate for ERACE, Equity, Race, and Community Engagement Coalition.
Yes.
Karen is originally from Richmond, Virginia. She's an Army veteran. Thank you for your service. And her husband is he retired Navy? He's retired
Yes.
now.
Yes.
And it's the Navy that
Yes.
brought Karen to our community in 1992. And I first met Karen, I feel like I've known you forever, when I was the director of marketing community relations for Bainbridge Island Museum of Art. And Karen and I still serve together on their education committee. And we've really shared, I think, a passion for accessibility to the arts for all, and a reflection of all our community members and what is exhibited and taught at the museum.
Yes.
And I'd say this is just a real small example of Karen's community involvement. Karen's passion for diversity and equity carries through her work mentoring students with Equity, Race, and Community Engagement Coalition, and just in so many, many things that you do. And so Karen is a well-respected community advocate, and she always energizes me. Oh my gosh, I can't leave a conversation without you without being completely energized. And so I'm really excited for her to share her advocacy story with you. And so I'm going to ask her a few questions. So welcome, Karen. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing today?
So, Karen, to be a strong advocate comes from a place of strong purpose.
Yeah.
And we talked about that a little bit last week about purpose. So what is your purpose? What gets you up in the morning?
Oh my gosh. My children always get me up in the morning. The needs of our community always gets me up in the morning. One of the things that I've always said to my young people is that you have to have a purpose in life. You can't just be willy-nilly with this stuff. What is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you care about? What is it that you love to do? Because you have to find a place where you are purposeful. And it doesn't matter what area it is, but you have to have purpose in life. You will perish without a purpose. And so I always make sure that that is heard. That's one of the things that the late Bishop Lawrence Ray Robertson said. We have to have a purpose. The people perish without purpose or vision. And so that thing was instilled in our souls and our very beings as we began to grow as a community together. And so it's important that when you're talking about purpose and vision, that messaging and that inspiration and empowerment piece has to be there. I know I'm working with a lot of our young people now that are having a lot of mental health issues, and it's challenging, but you have to inspire them because you have to pull them up out of depression and pull them up out of, oh, woe is me, and I'm not anybody, and oh, I don't matter, because you have to really transform a mindset. And that's not just with our young people, that's with many of our family members, community members. And so the mindset is something that you have to deal with, especially when you're a leader. When I began working with Living Life Leadership back in 1993, when we first arrived here, I understood that, many of the young people that I was working with didn't understand the concept of leadership. And so we began taking them to Minnesota, down working with the Search Institute down in Minnesota with the National Youth Leadership Council, really developing youth leaders and youth voice and what that meant. And so as we journeyed on, for even as we continue today, one of the things that we became very clear with is getting clear with servant leadership. Because, in the concept, in the mind of many of our young people is, oh, I'm the leader, I'm the boss, I'm this. So we have to transform all of that and help them to understand the of the servant leadership role. If they were going to step into leadership, they had to learn how to serve others. And so we continue with that track, and we continue with that even today. And so, um, that's just a little bit of it. But, it's a journey. It's always a journey. It's a learning journey. How do we step into our journey of learning how to serve and learning how to lead others to be of service to others? And so that is the foundational principles of a lot of the work that we've done. And it doesn't matter, because once our young people go down and they get a greater understanding, and they get some of the messaging and the languaging, and empower them and give them the skills, then they have to come back and they have to do what is called taking it back. And they are immersed in their communities to find the area where they can serve the community for the better, for betterment.
So,
Yeah, for
Karen,
betterment.
since I've known you, I mean, you've always advocated for the youth and
Yeah.
help them find their voice.
Yeah.
But when did you start this? Like, when did you find your voice? Have you always, like, when you were a teen, were you an advocate then? Like, really, like, what's motivated you to take action? When did you find your voice?
I think that when I was a young person growing up, um I had my what I would call my feet in two different communities, two different cultures. And it was a challenge. It was a struggle. I was born in Richmond, Virginia, and my father migrated up to Connecticut, where we were one of the only African American families within that community in Willamette, Connecticut. And it was a challenge even for us there. But then, my mom, she was like, "Oh, well, this isn't working out for us. I'm taking my children back to Richmond. At least there, they won't be, culturally bullied. They won't be this, they won't be that." So it was always teetering back and forth. And back in the 70s, in fact, back in the 60s, oh, I shouldn't be saying those words. That's telling my age. But back in the 60s, I got involved in a program that was called WACAP in Connecticut. And that was some community advocates that came together. They worked with the city, they worked with the employment agency, they worked with the University of Stores, Connecticut. And they worked with the parents within that community to begin to address some of the disparities that was in the community. So they gave us an area where we could work out employment. They gave us an area where we could do higher education, and each of us was assigned tutors from University of Stores, Connecticut, that was going to get their degrees in education to help empower the young people. And they targeted those underserved communities, and they begin to build relationships with the parents to empower the parents. They begin to build relationship with those young people. And I was so blessed to be a part of that type of program that modeled how to transform, how to begin to deal with deep-seated rooted issues of disparities within a community, but transform the community at the same time. So I think that because I was given that opportunity, I was one of the recipients. I was one of the young people that was a part of that. So I got to to not only be a part of it, I was also nurtured in that space and really empowered in that space, and inspired in that space. And so I think that has been that shift and that transformative um piece in my life that I have always carried with me, because I saw it being modeled and I saw it being done.
Wow. And so now you're doing the same. You're passing that on to
Yes, and yeah.
amazing. So, you mentioned before you need to have that conviction, and
Yes.
and I know your conviction really inspires others. So, in what ways are you right now? Like, are you
Yeah.
advocating for youth and equity, justice, peace, and understand? Because I know that's like a
Yeah.
really relevant right now. So,
Yes.
what actions are happening right now?
Oh, what's happening right now? Right now, there's a definite paradigm shift in our communities, in our nation, with all that's going on with social unrest, racial unrest, with COVID. COVID has really exposed so many disparities on what's happening within our community. So, you know, I had the awesome opportunity, and I say awesome opportunity last year to take our young people to the 2019. We not only did the civil rights pilgrimage, we went to Africa. We came back and we launched freedom schools in Portland, Oregon, and it was entire we kicked it off in the summer all the way to the finishing of the year, to be able to get a real grasp on what was happening, not just in our nation but globally. When it because all of these things were bubbling up. We think that just when 2020 came in, that's when everything hit the fan, but it wasn't really that. These things were happening, but we weren't awake. We weren't woke to it. We didn't understand the depth of it until COVID hit, and until, you know, our entire nation had to shift to address these health issues around COVID-19, as well as the issues with our social and racial unrest in our nation. And so we came back from Africa, and we for Martin Luther King, we just kicked it off with the Move and Be Move movement for Martin Luther King, and that was supposed to be an entire year of um, of looking at social justice and what that meant, racial justice, what that meant. And so we began to do work with equity, and with social and racial equity, justice issues in our county, in our communities, because this work must first start in our homes and in our communities. Because one of our mottos that we have with our Living Life Leadership students is, you cannot transform and change your environment or your community, because change first start with us. And so we have to deal with what's going on in our lives, and then it can spread abroad. And so we take that model and we first say, well, what's going on? We do our we do our little exercise that I call, you know our we us, our we us. How are we going to do this work? Because it takes entire community. It's not the I. We remove the I from all of our work. And so it's our, we, and us. And so when we move from those perspectives of how will we serve, what is our intentions, we move in those lens of empowering everyone at the table to have a voice. And so we take that model and we just began to move whatever issue there is. Like, our kids came back, they were concerned about the homeless, so they did initiatives for a year with Street Life. They went and they did their trainings. They came back. They wanted to do the school to prison pipeline, because those were some of the issues, because when they go down the national lays it out for them. These are the issues that are plaguing our communities, in our nation. And so they're immersed for that entire week in many of those areas. And so they had to go map the homeless for the week that they were in Tennessee. When they went to Philly, they had to map the school to prison pipeline for a week. So they'll come back with a greater understanding. And then they saw hands on what was being done in the community to transform and make change, to give individuals access and all of those challenges. And it wasn't cut and dry for them. So many of them struggled. Many of them was like, no, Miss Karen, I'm afraid I can't go. I can't do this. But you have to begin to give them a greater understanding of these issues, these civic issues that really affect their families as well. And they saw themselves in a lot of that work. And so they were empowered to come back and do some things.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like you just really have to be brave to take that first step to advocate,
Yes.
and you're instilling that in the youth, which is amazing.
Yes.
I'm just curious. We have a lot of participants on the call today that work for different organizations.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for them to how to begin to advocate, to find that braveness,
Yes.
to effectively advocate for their cause or for their organization? How do you get started? Because you might have you really want to do something and you're afraid, or how
Yeah.
do you find that? How do you find that voice and that braveness, courage?
Yeah. One of the things um that I think is very important is you have to understand how to break down some of the barriers to really begin to build community, because you will build esteem, you will build these things don't just, they're not just a given. Some of these things have to be built in as you go on that journey, as you're immersed in this work. One of the things that I say, time to just jump in, y'all. Just try, you know, I know that all of us have some challenges and some fears and some hesitation, but you know what? As we move through this, you'll begin to see that you can do this and that you make the difference. If you understand that you make the difference, you are the change. You are making that 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 change that will change, and that will change others. And so when you step into the role of being that change agent, and when I talk about change agent, I had to begin to talk to the young people because, um, like I said, many of their mindsets and perspectives were like, I'm not a leader. Well, everybody can serve. Martin Luther King said everybody can be a leader because everybody can serve. And we had to allow them to see you're a leader every day. Every day that you wake up, you take leadership. And I asked them, did you take a shower this morning? And they said, well, yeah. Did you cook breakfast? Well, yeah. And I said, did you prepare it for your siblings, your baby brother, your sister? Because you have to begin to allow them to see that they're taking leadership every day for their lives, whether good or bad, they are leaders. And so, we try to make sure that they're staying on the side of making good sound decisions, but they are leaders from the time they come out of the womb, I tell them. And so they understand and they are empowered and inspired to say, yeah, I am. I do a lot. So it starts with that self assessment and understanding who they are.
I think that's great. That's for all of us. We all have to know that we're leaders in some way or another and how we can influence our organizations.
Yes.
So I would
Yeah.
love to open it up to anyone else that may have a question for Karen. Uh, she has, she knows so much about our community, and uh, so I'm going to see here. We'll have to have that uncomfortable Zoom silence for a second. See if someone else has. Someone ask a question to Karen.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, I think it cuts across all causes and every person. You seem boundless with energy. How do you keep that well full? Like burnout is real, right?
Yes, my dear. Yes, that
And
is a real thing.
I'd love your perspective on that.
Oh man. One of the things that you do have to do self-care with this work. This work is not easy work. Sometimes the work that we do is very challenging. And sometimes you have to take that sabbatical and you have to begin to transform your own mindset, because what'll happen is you'll be like, I am tired. This is exhausting. This is that. So put on your music. Go get some food that you love to eat, you know, call a friend, you know, set times for fellowship for you to be fed as well as you do this work as you move forward. And so those are some of the things that you have to be intentional about as well, because I said this is a journey. This isn't a quick race. So we have to pace ourselves as we move forward to do any advocacy work. And then, you know, spend time building and cultivating some relationships that nurture that as well, because that's going to be important. You know, that circle that feeds you as you feed this work, as you begin to do this work. And that is so vital. I have seen over the years how um many of my friends and loved ones have really it's taken a toll on them. And you know, I always said many of this work has killed many of our leaders. And that's real talk right there. You know, that they've given their lives to this work and have lost their lives with just sheer exhaustion.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nicole. Does anyone else have a question?
I was just going to ask a follow-up, Karen, on that note. What are some things that you teach the youth that you work with to practically manage that at a young age when um, they're still learning so much how to identify their role as leaders and
Yeah.
how that happens in their everyday life? What kind of practical things do you give them to do to apply so
Yes.
that they can maintain a healthy
Well,
balance?
you know, many of our young people, we try to make sure that they are immersed in conflict resolution, mental health first aid. You know, as they're learning, they'll understand and see how, wow, that's me. You know, I need to start doing some of these things. I ain't got anger management issues. And so I always say, let's look at our training module, because that will, even though you're not preaching at them, because they're immersed in the learning process, they'll begin to take some of those tools that was giving them, whether it's with conflict resolution, mental health aid, first aid. The first thing that I advocate, I said, we need some mental health first aid here. So I was advocating for young people to be able to go through it. But they were like, oh no, this is for facilitators and for adults. I said, we're missing that, because young people are very private in a lot of their the way they move. And so you have to be creative and you have to be uh, really discerning on what your young people need, and then give it to them in a way that they don't feel like you're shoving it down their throat, but that they are actually um, advocating. They step into role to advocate for someone else, and in the same sense, they're advocating for themselves.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Karen. you're so inspiring to me. The work that you're doing. And as everyone mentioned, just the energy and your positivity. And I just thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. I so appreciate it. And
Anytime, Katie, for you, girl, anytime. Yes, ma'am.
oh
Yes,
my
ma'am.
gosh,
Well, I have to say this before, I say anything else. It is how we build and interact with one another that we'll be able to really advocate for our families, our communities, our young people, and really begin to build and unify and strengthen one another as we do any of this work. That's foundational principles for us. We have to build that. We have to build that, and there's no getting around it. It's all relational based work, and we have to keep it right there at the foundation, relational.
relational. Yeah, that is perfect for what we're going to work on next, because we're going to turn it over to Jennifer here in just a moment, and everyone's going to create their own Thrive plan for advocacy. And I think you've given us so much to think about, and those relational steps to take.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Karen. So everyone.